Welcome to Fantasy Football Live, presented by Ram Trucks. Man, I already got a smile on my face because the opening graphic had Santa Claus. That's right. Ho, 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 Merry, Merry, Merry. We're going to be the jolliest elves this side of the nut house for the next hour as we get you caught up and ready for everything you need to know. Fantasy semifinals going on. We got some ugly sweaters going on. Harmon's even in Christmas spirit. Matt Harmon, I can feel the Christmas spirit. Just you're exuding Christmas joy. I can't wait for the jolly elf version of you we're going to get for the next hour.
Why do you say it like even Harmon is in his sweater? I don't appreciate being excluded from the rest of the group in that fashion, or whatever you're implying by putting it that way. So I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to help the people, but I'm a little less happy to be talking to you now, Fitz.
I'm just saying, like, if there was any one of us that was going to be the Grinch in the animated version of this show, it might be Harmon. Tera would be Santa Claus though, because Tera always brings us gifts. Tera, we feel good. Like, semifinals going on, a lot of bad matchups, but we feel good, right? There's confidence in the air.
There's always confidence in the air. Our players are going to pull through. We're all going to win. It's going to be a wonderful ride to the fantasy championship, and Christmas is going to be fantastic. Yes, all positive.
Look, I see that's the beacon of light I needed in a dark, dark world. And of course, our legend, our great Andy Behrens, I don't even know the right way to term. You are every perfect Christmas movie wrapped up in one. See, Harmon, that's what we do for the good guys. Andy Behrens coming in a little bit of elf, little Christmas bacon, a little bit of everything. Andy Behrens, how we feeling?
We're feeling good. I've got my daughter asking me fantasy questions right now, and so the pressure's on. I can screw up a lot of decisions this week, but I cannot mess up her decisions. The stakes are high over here.
No pressure. You'd just be ruining Christmas. We've got an elf helping us on Twitter right now. Scott Pianowski parked his sleigh on Twitter. Actually, he's hanging out. He's got candy canes, fantasy advice, everything you could possibly want. I hear he's also got homemade Christmas cookies. So you can get some answers out there. And we're going to get as many answers as we can for you from the chat. You guys are already chiming in. We're going to have a lot of fun. So let's take a look at the latest injuries as we get everybody caught up on what they need to know going into kickoff. Actives, inactives. Zach Ertz, active. Tyrone Tracy, active. Tony Pollard, active. David Njoku, active. I should note also our graphics team, very active, putting everybody in Christmas sweaters today. Always love this episode because of their incredible work. Let's get to some top fantasy storylines for Week 16. Tera Roberts, what do you got?
I got Jalen Hurts versus Jayden Daniels part 2 here, because last time around was it was a little bit underwhelming in terms of the quarterback play. And we harp on how disappointing Jayden Daniels was in this matchup, but the stats between the two quarterbacks were actually fairly even. The difference between the two was literally an interception and about 20 yards on the ground here. The reality is that both of these defenses have done well against the pass, with Philadelphia obviously being the clear better defense, but I think we get stronger play from both quarterbacks here. In the first matchup, Jayden Daniels was dealing with that rib injury. He is fully healed. He is on fire, and Jalen has taken a lot of criticism, and he snapped back as well. Both of these teams are strong playoff contenders. I am excited for the quarterback play in this rematch here.
Look, that's a great call by you for a top fantasy storyline. Matt Harmon, what do you got for us as your favorite?
Yeah, one of the top storylines across the NFL right now is that Michael Penix, the rookie quarterback, is now starting for the Atlanta Falcons. Honestly, the Falcons really had no choice but to bench Kirk Cousins at this stage of the proceedings, given how he was playing. It remains to be seen if Penix is going to be a tangible upgrade on Kirk Cousins, but Cousins was averaging just 5.4 adjusted net yards per attempt in games that he did not face the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this season. That is about as bad as you can get at the quarterback position. So again, really just no choice. I thought maybe at different points this season that from a pure fantasy perspective, despite his limitations, Cousins was actually the right pick to keep the floor afloat for the pass catchers and the offense overall. But I mean, Fitz, we saw it against your Raiders. Cousins could barely execute like the zone, like the outside zone handoffs. That's how limited he was physically. And I think mistakes started to compound on themselves. So if you have Drake London, and I have Drake London in plenty of leagues, if you're starting Darnell Mooney in, kind of as a boom bust wide receiver too, I think the fact that Penix is the guy getting the matchup against this injured Giants defensive line and the leaky secondary that they have, that soft landing spot that he's going to get from this matchup, I think he's the guy you want under center. I think it truly just couldn't get any worse from a fantasy perspective.
Well, I love that. I'm going to go to the opposite side of the ball and with the opposite take on can't get any worse. Can't get any better right now than if you're lucky enough that a couple of weeks ago you stumbled on picking up the Falcons defense. That's the only thing better than my Christmas sweater would be the luck that you have if you realize that last week you got to watch the Falcons defense roar out and put a ton of points on because they were taking on the dreaded Las Vegas Raiders. My dreaded Las Vegas Raiders. But fear not. What luck do you get? Now the Falcons take on the Giants. Look, sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. And nobody could have sat there and predicted, you know what I'm going to need? I'm going to need the Falcons defense for 2 straight weeks through the playoffs. But the fact is, if you got them, you play them. And if you're playing them, you're getting points on your defense. It's savage to think that this year you're winning leagues because you have the Falcons defense and you're lucky enough to take on the Raiders and the Giants back-to-back weeks. Andy Behrens, give us your top fantasy storyline.
First of all, that's a great call by you. There's not a lot of relationship between the good fantasy defenses and the good real life defenses. That's a great call. I realize that it is a giving time of year generally, but it's a very selfish time of year in fantasy, and we are perhaps not all focused on the same storylines. For me, I need this Cincinnati offense. I need it to keep rolling for one more week at least. We cannot allow this team to lose a game and slip from playoff contention, right? Because this offense is just way too big to fail. We are going to need a win over the Browns this week. Also, wouldn't mind seeing losses by the Colts and or Dolphins. Everybody knows that Jamar Chase is positioned to win the receiving Triple Crown, but we should also note Joe Burrow has a real shot at a 5,000-yard passing season. He really just needs to maintain his average production from about the last 5 weeks or so, and he's going to get there. Also, T. Higgins, when he plays, basically averaging 75 yards and a touchdown each game. Chase Brown is the overall RB3 in per game scoring over the past 5 weeks. Cincinnati has a top 5 real life offense. We just need this team to keep it rolling, not shut anyone down, at least get us through championship week at full capacity. We are way past the point of worrying about opposing defensive matchups with Cincinnati. This is essentially a matchup-proof offense.
Past the point of worrying is not going to be a theme for today because many people are worried. Let's get a couple questions in general here. One from the YouTube chat. Oakley Sutherland. Tara, I'm going to ask you, half PPR need one. Flex Njoku, Aaron Jones, or Devontae Smith?
Honestly, I would go with Aaron Jones. Guaranteed luck and volume. Matchup isn't bad here. You know, Njoku's dealing with an injury, and then Devontae Smith has been on fire, but it could come down at any moment there. So Aaron Jones probably the safer option to go with there.
And let's get a question in here for Andy Behrens. Jose says half PPR, pick 2. Marvin Harrison Jr., Calvin Ridley, Jayden Reed, Brian Robinson Jr., Kendre Miller, or Tyjae Spears?
Yeah, I would have leaned Tyjae Spears if not for the news that Tony Pollard is actually playing. Tony Pollard chasing a bunch of incentives too, so I think he's going to see the ball a lot. I'm going to go Brian Robinson Jr. here. We at least know that the touches are guaranteed, and give me Calvin Ridley in this one. Slight edge over Jayden Reed.
All right, let's get to some fantasy stocking stuffers. That's right. The best part about waking up on Christmas Day is trying to see what Santa left in the stocking. I keep hoping it'll be Harmon in my stocking this year. So we'll give you some last minute sleepers and pickups we can get. Andy Behrens, your stocking stuffer is...
Yeah, Miami is going to be without Jalen Waddle this week, and Tyreek Hill is battling injury. The team is in a potential shootout with the Niners, so Malik Washington, a rookie receiver, could get pretty interesting in this one. Both Tua and Mike McDaniel have kind of gassed him up recently. Tua actually talked up Washington's reliability in terms of run game responsibilities. That's a real key to seeing the field. He's been a return specialist much of the season, but Washington caught 5 passes for 52 yards on 6 targets last week. He's been mostly a short-range receiver, very low ADOT guy, yards after catch guy, 6th-round pick out of Virginia, coming off a wild collegiate season. He actually had 110 catches for over 1,400 yards last year, led the nation in receptions, did it with absolutely ridiculous week-to-week consistency. He's looking like a very solid option to me this week, particularly in full PPR. He's also a minimum price option in our daily game, heading into a week in which plenty of snaps and targets are available.
I just keep looking at that blow mold reindeer behind you, and I realize I don't want Harmon anymore. It's my stocking stuffer. I want the blow mold reindeer. All right, Harmon, give me your stocking stuffer. What do you got?
Yeah, first of all, let me just say, forget Christmas spirit, holiday joy, any of that nonsense. Nothing makes me happier than Andy Behrens gassing up Malik Washington. That guy is a baller. Very excited about that. But Brenton Strange is my pick for this segment here, the Jacksonville Jaguars tight end. If you are like me and you've made it to your fantasy semifinals while really never having figured out the tight end position, I think this guy is a great addition here off the waiver wire. Last week, the Jacksonville Jaguars, since they came off the bye, have rightly been prioritizing Brian Thomas Jr. as the focal point of the offense. He had 14 targets, but right behind him was Brenton Strange with 12 targets, 11 catches, 73 yards. He basically just took Evan Ingram's role. Like sometimes we say this in fantasy, like, oh, this guy's going to assume X player's role or whatever, and that's not a real thing. It appears in Jacksonville, maybe that is a real thing. I mean, Doug Peterson's offenses have always revolved around a safety net at the tight end position, going back to his Philadelphia days. That's what Evan Ingram, like they specifically targeted him for this role here. Brenton Strange actually spent a high priority draft pick, even though he had very similar kind of overlapping skills to Evan Ingram. Well, now that Ingram's out of the mix, it looks like Strange is going to be a guy that's going to collect a ton of targets in the underneath area, while Brian Thomas Jr. again remains that more downfield focal point in the passing game. So if you're just pure reception hunting against a rough Raiders defense this week, I think Brenton Strange might be your answer at the tight end position.
All right, Harmon, you got the hot hand. Got to feed the hot hand here. Drizzo asks, pick one, Njoku or Strange, and pick one, Jennings, Myers, Smith, Devonta Smith.
I know we're going to be talking about this game a lot, this Raiders-Jaguars, maybe potentially beautifully bad shootout, but I think I'm going to go with both of the options from that game here. Look, I mean, I just really don't want to be messing around with Browns pass catchers now that Jameis Winston's no longer part of the proceeding here, so I'm going Strange over Njoku, and I think Myers with Aiden O'Connell back out there is right along that wide receiver 3 radar. He feels a little bit safer than Devonta Smith to me.
Beautifully Strange is going to be the name of our cover band at some point. Okay, Tara, give me your stocking stuffer.
I am giving you Amir Abdullah, and before you look at me like I'm crazy, hear me out on that. I would rather play Amir Abdullah over Alexander Mattison this week. The Vegas backfield should theoretically go back to Alexander Mattison with Sincere McCormick out, but what is Mattison as a lead back actually worth? He has averaged a mere 3.3 yards per carry, some of the worst advanced metrics of any running back in the league. The real value here in this Vegas backfield is actually in who is catching the ball. And while Mattison has been used as a receiver in the past, Amir Abdullah is just simply better as a receiving threat here, and he's been thriving recently. He actually has the higher upside in terms of a play this week, and you can realistically get 10 fantasy points out of him fairly easily in full PPR. If you have to do it, if you have to turn to the Vegas backfield, it's Amir Abdullah that I am the most interested in here.
I cannot believe the amount of love we are giving a bad matchup. That is the theme for the day. By the way, Luis Leon says, good morning and day, everybody. Good morning to you, too, Luis. Keep the questions coming in the YouTube chat. We'll get to more of them in just a second. But first, we got to get to make your pick. Tara, stick around with me. We're going to figure out some help that some of our great users need. Again, I love these Christmas graphics. Jonathan Chang with the first question for Make Your Pick. Which two to start out of these 4 running backs, full PPR? Kondre Miller, Patrick Taylor Jr., Rachaad White, Jerome Ford, Ask FFL. What do you think, Tara?
You know, these are all very decent options here. I don't think you can go terribly wrong with any of them, but Ford gets first priority on this because of the matchup being against Cincinnati, one of the best matchups that you can literally ask for, even with Dorian Thompson-Robinson at quarterback here. And then the next one you might be a little bit uncomfortable with, but I'm actually going to talk about this guy later and why you should lean into it. It is Rachaad White. Despite being the only guy here who is not actually the RB1 of his team, White is the most trustworthy option here with an extremely high ceiling and a solid floor.
All right, let's get the next question in from Mike Buxton. Says, pick 2 of Jayden Reed, Calvin Ridley, and Keon Coleman in full PPR. What do you think, Tara?
While I do like Keon Coleman, this one is pretty easy for me here. It is Jayden Reed and Calvin Ridley here. These are all boom bust players, but at least Reed has a very high ceiling. And then with Ridley, we know that there's a guaranteed level of targets for him. Plus the change to Mason Rudolph could actually be more beneficial for him. Keon Coleman's target share is just low and unreliable at this point, unfortunately.
The next question comes from Casey Anderson. Half PPR, need one running back in flex. Tony Pollard, Patrick Taylor Jr., Rachaad White, Adam Thielen, Jamison Williams. What do you think?
At running back here, I am leaning towards Pollard. Again, looking at these wide receivers, we expect a bounce back week here for Thielen, but Jameson is also very risky with Goff outdoors here. Just go with the running back here for your first option in Pollard, the guy who, while he does have some additional options in the backfield with Tajay Spears, he has been solid and stable this entire season. And then for your second option, your flex option here, again, we are going with Rachaad White. And on this one, feeling comfortable with him in general. We just feel positive about the level of upside that he has, and he's been very reliable in terms of his floor.
And get another one here from Derek Tom. Derek Tom, half PPR, pick one for the flex. Tajay Spears, Jalen McMillan, Patrick Taylor, or Darnell Mooney. What do you think?
This one is a complicated one. It is. Let's nix out Spears. Again, I just talked about Tony Pollard. He is the lead back there. For this first one here, pick one. I mean, I'm just going to go with Patrick Taylor here. I'm kind of happy that I finally get to say him. And it's difficult to feel comfortable with relying on him. It is his first time getting the start here. McMillan is flashy. He's coming off a strong performance, but there is a level of risk here. Taylor is the guy that I would lean towards.
I'm going to throw one more in from the YouTube chat. Jose O asks, half PPR, Hawkinson or Njoku, can we trust DTJ? What do you think?
We cannot trust DTJ. I know it's a beautiful matchup. It is, but man, his short entire career has been very disappointing at this point. I would just rather lean into the safety of a guy like TJ Hawkinson.
Look at that. All right, Tara, a well-deserved break you now get to take is Andy and Matt are going to take our special guest stars, Heat Miser, Snow Miser. We're going to let them figure out Santas and Grinches for the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, who better to discuss fantasy Santas and Grinches with me than Matt Harmon, a man who actually lives in a mountain cave high above Whoville. People don't know that. We're going to look around the league and see who's in a giving mood this week or a Grinchy mood. Harmon, start us off.
Am I just eating because I'm bored? No, yeah. So Santa here this week is Aaron Rodgers. And Andy, I kind of pulled a Behrens in a couple segments ago when I talked about a player, literally a strange player off the waiver wire that I'm starting in a suspicious amount of leagues. I'm going to pull a bit of a Behrens here and say that we care about this Rodgers being the Santa because the Jets offense is too big to fail, as you often say. Like, we need Rodgers to be playing really good football right now, and he is. He's actually playing like a top 5 quarterback over the last 2 weeks. He is 4th in EPA per dropback. He ranks 5th in adjusted yards per attempt, and he's doing it while pushing the ball downfield. And even as a scrambler, Rodgers has been highly productive and useful for the offense. He's behind only Josh Allen and Jayden Daniels in EPA added on scrambles the last 2 weeks. It's a very small sample. It's too little too late for the actual New York Jets, but who cares about that? We care about our fantasy players being elevated, and even more than that, he's playing the Rams and the Bills the next 2 weeks. These are matchups we really care about. We want the Jets offense to incentivize these offenses to really push it, and we could see 2 high-scoring matchups if Rodgers continues to play like the Santa Claus we're seeing develop before our eyes.
That's a good call by you. Rodgers has actually snuck into the top 12 overall fantasy quarterbacks this year, which is kind of an indictment of the position. But hey, it's okay if you're starting him in Superflex. I'm gonna look at a Grinch here, and it's gonna be Cleveland head coach Kevin Stefanski. You, sir, are a sour old Grinch. This man stuck with Jameis Winston through weeks of bad matchups: Pittsburgh, Kansas City, the Chargers, Denver, and now, when a favorable spot finally appears on the schedule against Cincinnati, what does he do? Jameis heads to the sideline in favor of Dorian Thompson-Robinson, a man who offers all of Winston's downside basically without the ceiling. DTR has thrown 1 career touchdown pass and 7 interceptions, completing just over 50% of his throws. That's just a lot of stunk right there. Kevin Stefanski basically came down the mountain with his little dog, stole all the presents, left us with a hopeless and untouchable offensive environment here. We can't mess with Jerry Jeudy this week unless you are truly desperate. I'm not saying that it would have been a clinic with Jameis Winston, certainly, but it would have been fun. He was definitely going to throw touchdown passes to both teams and finish with over 300 yards. That's fun. So Stefanski, you're a big old Grinch. Matt, who is Grinching for you?
Grinching for me, and look, I never wish for injuries. I would never do that. However, sometimes injury situations do provide a little bit of clarity. And when Kenneth Walker was not playing for the Seattle Seahawks, there was a lot of clarity in the Seahawks backfield because Zach Charbonnet was just operating as a feature back, and he was playing really well. Some of the best Seattle rushing performances have been in the last few weeks with Charbonnet operating as that feature back. I think the fact that Walker's back here, this Seahawks backfield becomes a little bit of a Grinch. I'm not sure what we're going to get. Are we going to get a situation where both of these backs come down to Whoville and take all the presents, just rip off the lights, take down the trees, whatever? Or since, Zach Charbonnet, don't know if you saw this, Andy, NFL Network reported he's going to be out there as a team captain. He's going to be listed as the starter. Is this actually a redeeming story here for the Grinch? As someone who also has a small little dog and maybe has a little bit of a brooding disposition, some would say that my heart has grown 3 sizes, over the years. Is this a situation where the Seahawks backfield can beat the allegations and maybe Charbonnet just becomes the guy? Probably not, but it would be a nice ending to this story.
Oh, that's a really good call by you. We actually have a YouTube question coming in from Derek Grinnell that relates to this backfield. Okay, I'm gonna send it to you. I don't want to touch this. Kenneth Walker or Rachaad White? Full PPR.
Full PPR. That makes it a Rachaad White situation here because I think you can scam your way to a few. Let me tell you what, as somebody that has no pride, I have been scamming my way to Rachaad White points in PPR all year long and feeling pretty good about it. So I'd actually go Rachaad White in this one.
Yeah, no, that's a good call. The format tips it in. I'm going to finish with a Santa. I'm going to finish with a feel good. Let's talk about Trey McBride. He should be in full Santa mode this week. It would really be a wonderful moment, a wonderful time for McBride to deliver his first receiving touchdown of the season and maybe his second, perhaps his third. I need it. In fact, all I've asked for this holiday season really is a multi-touchdown game for McBride. I'm not greedy. He's facing Carolina. That's a defense that's been generous to the tight end position all year. They allowed the 6th most fantasy points to QBs, the most to running backs, the most to opposing tight ends. They are exceedingly generous. Tight ends have actually scored 11 touchdowns on the season against Carolina, by far the most in the league. It's got to happen this week for McBride. Kyler Murray seems very committed to it, although he tried his best last week and it didn't work out. It is simply wild that McBride has drawn 116 targets on the year. He's caught 89, doesn't have a receiving touchdown. But this situation, again, should right itself this week. Again, I'm just asking for this one small holiday miracle, an end zone visit from Trey McBride. All right, let's get everyone back in here for more serious and less festive fantasy analysis.
You guys both end up on the nice list for the amount of spectacular Grinch references. Let's get to our fantasy game changers for this week. Powered by Ram Trucks, where we're identifying some of the most impactful players in one of the top fantasy matchups on the schedule. Sunday Night Football down in Tejas. The Cowboys hosting Tampa Bay. This one, obviously, a lot on the line for Tampa Bay in Arlington. Buccaneers favored by 4. Over under on it is 48. Fantasy game changer for you, Andy Behrens, would be...
Oh, this might be my final chance on the year to hype Bucky Irving, so of course I'm going to give it to you again. Irving has ascended to a featured role, obviously, in Tampa's backfield as a rookie. He's coming off a game in which he rushed for 117 yards while injured. He's now averaging 5.6 yards per carry on the season, 6 yards per touch, over 3 yards after contact per attempt. He's piling up highlights. He's piling up missed tackles. He's a joy to watch. Also, in the most important week on the fantasy calendar, this man is playing through multiple injuries, still producing at an elite level. This is the sort of thing that earns holiday goodwill. Tonight, Irving gets a matchup with a vulnerable Dallas defense. We've been picking on them all year, especially in the run game. They've allowed 4.8 yards per carry so far on the season, 16 touchdowns to opposing running backs, and the 6th most fantasy points. Dallas ranks 29th in the league overall against the run. 6 different backs have cleared 100 scrimmage yards against them. There is a very good chance, I think, that Irving is going to be the 7th. He has maintained his value just fine alongside Rachaad White. It helps when you're simply one of the best and most efficient runners in football.
Matt Harmon, fantasy game changer for you is...
Yeah, I mean, that's cute. Calling Bucky Irving a featured runner. The real featured runner in this game is Rico Dowdle. Week 15, we saw Rico Dowdle set a career high in rushing yards and yards from scrimmage for the third straight week. He just continues to get better and better. 25 carries, 149 rushing yards in that game. He's just been cranking out successful run after successful run after successful run. He is just moving this offense along. Yards per carry is high, and he's not like ripping off long runs to make it fluky. He's just been, like I said, extremely efficient on a per carry basis. Over the last 4 games, he has handled 67% of the backfield carries. He's been on the field for 70% of the snaps. He's averaging over 100 rushing yards per game. He's right up there with among the most productive backs in the league. And I get it. There's no question. There's a lot of really questionable matchups in this stretch. We've got the Giants, we've got the Bengals, we've got the Panthers. The last 3 weeks, these are all, terrible run defenses. But all we can ask from a guy like this, if you're going to get all the work, is crush the cakewalk spots. That's what he's been doing. And I wouldn't call this Buccaneers run defense like a juggernaut or anything. They actually give up the 10th most yards per carry to running backs on the season. So I think this is another big week for Bucky Irving as a top 10 fantasy running back.
All right, Tera Roberts, your fantasy game changer is.
You guys are talking about the running backs, but I'm not letting CeeDee Lamb go unnoticed here. He is the game changer in this matchup because life with Cooper Rush hasn't actually been that bad for CeeDee Lamb. He has had 4 top 20 finishes over the past 5 games and is coming off a wide receiver 7 finish with 9 receptions for over 100 yards and a touchdown. Again, his success with Cooper Rush is probably less about Cooper Rush and the fact that the Cowboys, as Matt said, have had very generous matchups over this stretch, but they just keep on giving here. And now we've got a Tampa Bay defense that gives up the 9th most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. Lamb has a beautiful setup here. He is healthy and he should be hyper targeted this week for another top 10 finish.
All right, let's load the sleigh up with user questions. Get everybody together. We'll decide which reindeer is which and get you some hurry-up offense as we will bounce from rooftop to rooftop to deliver presents. Bryant Bulldog Stan says, Superflex, choose one. Anthony Richardson, Cooper Kupp, George Kittle, or K9 Charbonnet. Harmon, what do you got in this one?
I mean, I think we got to go with Anthony Richardson in this one. Going to talk about a little bit later. I think this Titans defense has kind of slipped in the back half of the year. So I think because of Superflex, you just got to go with the quarterback on this one.
All right, we'll go to Andy Behrens. We'll let him be Rudolph for us on this next one. Guide us through this. Jordan PT TPT says, lost David Montgomery. Have the choice of Kendre Miller, Ray Davis, or Craig Reynolds. Help me, old wise one. Ouch. Woo! What do you think,
Ouch.
Andy?
Ouch is right.
Yeah.
Listen, there's nobody in this question who is just going to step into the kind of production we would have expected from David Montgomery. I get the idea with Ray Davis, right? Maybe Buffalo gets out to a big lead against New England, and then it's the Ray Davis show. It's possible, but I would actually go Kendre Miller for the guaranteed touches.
I'm going to blame our producer, Dan, for making sure that I directed that to you. I think he was the one calling you old. Tera, Mike says, Merry Christmas to the whole FFL crew. Woohoo! Tera helped me into the semis last week. Let's take it to the ship. Bench 1 in PPR. BTJ, Adams, Wilson, Myers, Jennings. What do you think, Tera?
I mean, I'll help here, but honestly, I don't think you can go wrong. These are all fantastic options that are on fire. I think Myers is the one that I'll go with here, but you can't go wrong.
Andy Behrens, we'll come back to you on the next one. Luis Leon in the YouTube chat says, Jayden Daniels or Anthony Richardson in PPR. Thomas Jr. or Shakir for wide receiver in running back slot. Rico, Abdullah, Robinson Jr. And thank you all. That's a lot of questions. What do you think?
I think I'm going Jayden Daniels. Too difficult for me to trust Anthony Richardson. I'm definitely going Brian Thomas Jr. here. Nothing wrong with Shakir, but going Brian Thomas. It's coming off a multiple touchdown game. And then I'm going Rico for most of the reasons Harmon already gave us.
Hey, that was pretty good getting that in that quickly. Another one from the YouTube chat. This one for Harmon. K Casthetic says, Merry Christmas, y'all. And then includes emojis. You know, I love that. Who should I start at quarterback? Purdy or Williams? Thielen or McMillan at flex PPR? What do you think, Harmon?
I think I'm going to go Thielen over McMillan. Still kind of skeptical that McMillan's really like a featured part of this offense. I think he's had some good designer plays, but Thielen is the guy there for Bryce Young in Carolina. And from the quarterback position, I'd probably go Purdy over Caleb Williams, even if it's a good matchup with a banged-up Lions defense.
The next YouTube question, I'll spell the name out, DPAHOCH. I'm not going to try and pronounce that because it could have turned into a naughty word. All right, emoji, flex spot at my defense in question, full PPR. Addison, Stevenson, or Reed, Cincy, or Indy. Happy holidays from Sweden. What do you think? What do you think, Tara?
Oh, I am going to go with Cincinnati on the defensive spot there. I do like Indianapolis's defense this week, but man, we just talked about DTR being who he is, and then Addison on the other one.
All right, we'll go back on this one to Sam. Sam is the next question. Which two to start full PPR? DJ Moore, McLaren, JSN, DK. What do you think, Andy?
I think we definitely cannot sit JSN at this point. He's emerged as the clear number one there. He's a wide receiver one on the season. So he's an easy play. Tough call between DJ Moore and Terry McLaurin. I would lean McLaurin. I know the corner matchup is difficult, but they've been moving him around a little bit. I really think. I think you got to go with the highest upside in the playoffs.
And then Harmon, you get this last one. Shank Mike. I don't know what Mike deserved to be shanked. Ask FFL, Jalen Coker, Brian Robinson, Madison, or Spears for flex. PPR. What do you think, Harmon?
Yeah, I know this. Maybe the PPR is what's throwing this off here, but like Brian Robinson Jr. seems like a cut above some of these other options here. I'm with Tara that I'm not trying to really mess around with the Alexander Madison stuff. Spears is not really part of the equation, or with Tony Pollard being back there. Maybe it's Coker. I'm a big Jalen Coker fan, but I think Brian Robinson's the right answer.
No matter how your season has gone, I can tell you it would have gone better if you spent more time hanging out with Fantasy Focus. I'm just telling you, there's a reason it's a great show. And managers were worried about whether or not the Bengals people should be worried about possible blowouts and what it could mean. Check out a little of their conversation from this week.
I think Higgins is in a really, really good spot for fantasy managers this week.
Yeah, last week he was a top 10 receiver. I think he's a top 10 receiver this week. You're obviously starting him. You're starting Jamar Chase. What it comes down to for me, though, is now that we know Jameis isn't starting, can DTR keep this game close enough to actually make Joe Burrow throw 40-plus times a game? We know the Bengals defense has been bad. It remains bad these last couple of weeks. It's forcing Joe Burrow to lead the NFL in pass attempts. But if they start to get up by 14, 15 points, 20 points, which has not been the case this year, you could see Chase Brown safe either way in this scenario. He looks great either way this week, but you can see a little bit less passing volume, which hurts both of those guys getting there in a major way, which at this point of the season, all those big Jamar Chase 170, 200-yard games, you would love it to happen in the fantasy postseason. I'm just concerned at what the offense on the other side is going to do to fuel that this week.
If DTR can't keep pace in this game, I don't know. We could see the Bengals, they never blow anybody out just with their defense, but we could potentially see them blow out the Browns this week.
Introducing Daily Draw, the latest free-to-play game from Yahoo Sports. Daily Draw gives you a pack of 6 prediction cards every day based on the day's biggest sporting event. Download or update the Yahoo Sports app on the Apple App Store or Google Play and join the action with Daily Draw today.
Daily Draw is a blast. Be sure to check it out. All right, who's hot? Who's not? Who's been absolutely crushing it? Derrick Henry, 19.9 points. You see Gus Edwards there, 19.6. Tank Dell, 18.8. Xavier Worthy, 17. Obviously, that's some of the good that we've seen. But then from the good, there's also the bad. Who's not? Isaiah Pacheco, tough time for that. 3 points. Pratt Freiermuth, 3.1 points. I feel like his name's come up a lot. Just didn't get a lot there. Najee Harris, 4.2 points. So some really tough days there, nights there. In the Saturday matchups. In the meantime, one of the big games that we've got coming up, Eagles, Commanders, everybody's got their eye on it. Eagles favored by 3.5, over under on this 45.5. So when we start looking at this one, start looking at some of the biggest angles, ladies and gentlemen, my question is the Eagles passing game going to suddenly keep exploding, or was this just a 1 week reaction? We see this. We talk about this all the time where a wide receiver comes out and screams for the ball and we get it. And I even think Jalen Hurts and the way he handled the press conference afterwards, is that what you're looking for? Like, Eagles understood that we were all saying their passing game was a question. So they came out and they showed what they can do. I don't know that I'm going to sit here and say that that's suddenly the new path for the Eagles moving forward. Like, I don't think that we should suddenly look at this as explosion as the new standard of what they're going to do. It's going to be interesting to see now that we've gotten that out of their system, what it looks like moving forward. Andy Behrens, your top thought on this game.
Oh, yeah. For me, this is Saquon Barkley. He's only been held below 80 scrimmage yards 3 times this season, and he's coming off one of those games, a game in which he also failed to reach the end zone. If you happen to lose in the fantasy playoffs last week with Barkley on the roster, get ready to experience one of the just absolute immutable laws in fantasy, which is that your recently eliminated lineup is about to absolutely go off. It never fails. Barkley is definitely carrying you to 5th place and a ridiculous fantasy week in this one. Washington's run defense ranks in the bottom third of the league. They've given up 4.8 yards per carry on the season, over 130 rushing yards per game. Barkley, meanwhile, needs just 312 rushing yards for 2,000 on the season. He's averaging over 120 rushing yards per game. Eric Dickerson's record is very much still in play. Barkley also gets the Giants in Week 18, which is a little bit too perfect. He is definitely getting back on track this week, I think, with yet another monster performance. If he's on your eliminated roster, just look away. It's going to get bad. I think he's certainly about to clear 100 yards on the ground. Probably a good bet for 20-plus fantasy points.
Yeah, and they know that record's right there. It's going to be interesting to see how that impacts his carries. All right, Matt Harmon, your top angle on this game.
Yeah, I want to talk about what Andy kind of hinted at a little bit earlier, that Terry McLaurin's usage is better than last time he played Philadelphia. Obviously, the last time these two teams matched up, Washington had what I would call a troubling outing overall on offense, in addition to the fact that they just could not control the line of scrimmage against Jalen Carter and the guys up front. Really, the best way that this was expressed was Quinyon Mitchell versus Terry McLaurin. According to Next Gen Stats, the last time these two guys matched up, Quinyon Mitchell lined up against Terry McLaurin on 20 of his 25 routes, 80%, including 19 of 20 when he was lined up out wide. This was, again, in Week 11, the rookie corner against the veteran receiver. Jayden Daniels never threw to Terry McLaurin when he was in Quinyon Mitchell's coverage. The critical change here is that since then, Cliff Kingsbury has finally started moving his number one wide receiver across the formation. We saw last week against the New Orleans Saints, almost all of McLaurin's big plays came when he was lined up as the right outside receiver. This would put him in more of Darius Slay's coverage, because these guys do not move around. They primarily, like, Slay plays on the defensive left 93% of the time. Mitchell plays 95% on the defensive right, according to PFF. So as long as we continue to see Cliff Kingsbury move Terry McLaurin around, primarily against Darius Slay and some of that zone coverage over there, that's a matchup where McLaurin can definitely take advantage of the secondary.
Stick on McLaurin for a second, because Brazil has asked us in the YouTube chat. Merry Christmas, everyone. I need 2 running backs and 1 flex. Jones, Irving, Taylor, McLaurin. Another league, Dowdle or Hubbard. Super chat for Christmas. What do you think?
Oh, yeah, that's a lot going on there. I would probably play Dowdle over Hubbard for that other league. As for this one, I would probably rank those options as Bucky Irving, Aaron Jones, and yeah, between Jonathan Taylor and Terry McLaurin. I actually think, because you've already got 2 backs in there, let's shoot for a little bit of a ceiling with Terry McLaurin in that one.
Look at that. Well, handled like an expert, my friend. All right, Tara, give us your thought on this game.
All this talk about Jayden Daniels, Jalen Hurts, the receivers, and Saquon Barkley, but what about Brian Robinson? We had that start-sit question that had Brian Robinson next to guys like Tajay Spears and Alexander Madison. That's just too much disrespect on him, because aside from a Week 12 game where he played less than 20% of snaps due to injury, Robinson has had just 1 game below 10 fantasy points. He has been incredibly reliable and efficient, despite spending most of the season sharing the backfield with Austin Eckler. Robinson had 14 points in the first matchup here, and that was with Eckler. Now, without Eckler, this could easily be a strong RB1 performance for him. I think we need to put a little bit of respect on Brian Robinson's name in this matchup.
All right, let's get to some primetime picks. You guys know what we do. We're going to go through 3 different games. We're going to go through a snake draft. We're going to make some picks. By the way, this thing has come down to the wire. As you can see here, Andy Behrens with the win. Now we have Andy, Harmon, and Roberts all with 4, and me with 3. Another second place finish for me. I'm good at second place. It's got me in last place overall, though. So that's all I can say. By the way, 2 pass for Andy to get a win here. If Andy wins outright, he's going to win this thing. If I win this week and it ends up tied, the total points looks like it is definitely favoring Andy Behrens here. So 2 ways for Andy Behrens to get a victory in a very close matchup. Our games to pick from: Tampa Bay, Dallas, New Orleans, Green Bay. And then we as a group got to decide what we wanted the third game to be. And because we are gluttons for punishment and gross people, we took Jags Raiders. I don't know why we took Jags Raiders, other than it just gives us a reason to talk about just the worst game we could possibly imagine. I've got the first pick here. And look, I've got nothing to lose other than just pride at this point. So I'm going to go with the easy thing here. Josh Jacobs, Monday Night Football. Give me Jacobs getting a bunch of work against New Orleans. Good opportunity to try and start off on the right foot here. I don't know. I'm in last place. So Tera, this has been a bit of a fall. Like Tera needs this. Tera was in first place much of the season. This is the last time to really reassert yourself, Tera. What do you got as your first pick?
Yeah, I got to get the win here. Just call me the 2023 Philadelphia Eagles because my late season collapse here has, it's been epic. I want to save myself. I can't play this straight up. CD Lamb is the logical pick here, but I can't do that here because there's so many options in that one. I'm just going to take Brian Thomas coming off his career best performance there. Life with Mac Jones hasn't been that bad, so I'm hoping for a repeat performance here.
All right, that means Harmon is up. Harmon, a lot on the line here, buddy. This is your chance to get a victory. Who's your first pick in an attempt to win this thing?
Yeah, I'll admit that when I personally advocated for us taking Jacksonville and Las Vegas as the third game, I was really hoping to take Brian Thomas Jr. at this third overall pick, but Tera has vexed me on this one. So I'm going to go with CD Lamb, facing a terribly, terribly generous Buccaneers secondary, and hopefully that's good enough here with my first pick.
Which means all eyes are on Andy Behrens with all the pressure. You can't blow this. You got two ways to win, Andy. So you got two straight picks on the turn. What do you got?
Oh, don't worry. I can blow it. Yeah, that whole Raiders-Jaguars discussion seemed really funny and quirky on like Wednesday or Thursday when we initiated it. It feels pretty terrible right now. I'm gonna start with Mike Evans, mostly because Tampa Bay is just in full get Evans to 1,000 yards mode right now, and the game has shootout written all over it. He's top 3 fantasy receiver for me this week. And then my next pick, it's tough because I don't like the fourth option in either of the games that remain. So I'm gonna go to Green Bay. I'm gonna pick Jayden Reed. He's coming off a game in which he actually saw 8 touches. I know it's been a little quiet for him lately, but volume flowed his way last week, and I'm hoping it continues against the Saints.
All right, that means you're up, Harmon. Got a little swagger coming back to the podium. What do you got for us next?
I didn't say anything about swagger coming back to the podium after Jayden Reed goes right in front of me. You know what? I think it's time to get weird. It's week 16. You know, this is it. This is for everything right here. Let's go with Kendre Miller. I do not want to have to come back to this podium and be staring at like, which peculiar Saints wide receiver do I want to take? Do I want to put my fate in the hands of Christian Watson? I don't want to be doing either of those things, and I'm nervous that Tera could take Kendre Miller at some point here before I come back. So I'm gonna go with Kendre Miller and just hope that he ends up. You know, he's kind of trying to do an Alvin Kamara impression with the like tape on his arms and some of the way he's kind of running right now. So let's hope we get an Alvin Kamara impression from Kendre Miller here.
Oh, that means Tera, I hope your plans weren't foiled. I hope he didn't just, steal Christmas from you. What do you got for your next pick?
Yeah, no, he did snipe me, but that's okay. That's all right here because you made it simple. Obviously, I cannot take a Packers player here. There's no point. There's no point. So I am going to go back to the Tampa Bay Dallas game, and I'm going to pick Bucky Irving here. I mean, we've talked about him so glowingly this entire episode, so hopefully it comes through here. Over 100 yards on the ground last week, playing through injury. He's healthier now. He's one of the most explosive players in the NFL. I'm banking on an overall RB1 week here from Bucky Irving.
Well, as the consummate student that I've always been, why read the book if you can see the movie, and why see the movie if you can get the Cliff's Notes? I'm just going to steal everything that Harmon said, walk up and say, Rico Dowdle. There we go. I'm using Harmon's work against him in this process, taking Dowdle, not even thinking about it. And then I come back around the turn. And look, I'm going to take my Charlie in the box. I'm going to go to the game that I absolutely am still going to watch because I'm a glutton for punishment. And I'm going to say, if there's any one player in the world that can save me and create a 4-way tie and create mass confusion, let it be the single greatest rookie season I can remember for anybody that plays for my favorite football team. I'll take Brock Bowers, who doesn't get in the end zone often, but maybe, just maybe, it's against the Jags. Maybe Brock Bowers can be the ruiner of this whole game for everybody else, and I can take that one to the bank. That means, Tera, you are back up.
I think it's going to happen for you, Fitz. I kept taking Bowers and he sold me, so he's probably going to give it to you here. I'm going to take a Packers here, obviously, and avoid the Saints. And I'm going to go with Romeo Doubs here. I could do worse. I could do worse in this pick, and Romeo Doubs is coming off a 2-touchdown performance. Am I confident in him? Absolutely not, but it is the best option left. So what can go wrong?
Nothing. I mean, if there's anything we learned, football's totally predictable. It will work out perfectly. Harmon, that means you're up. Who's your last pick?
Yeah, I think it's time for Romeo Doubs maybe start complaining about targets again. Maybe let's get another suspension going in here for week 16. No, you know what? I'm pretty excited to take Jacoby Myers for a couple reasons. One, AOC's back there, and he can push that ball down the field. And two, I mean, look at the sweater on these Raiders players. That is absolutely electric stuff here. So yeah, Jacoby Myers, one of the most underrated wideouts in the game. Welcome to Team Harmon. You've officially classed up the joint with this outfit.
Yeah, by the way, if the guys behind the scenes could just go ahead and Photoshop my face into any of those Raiders sweaters, I think that might be my Christmas card for the rest of my life. Andy Behrens, you close this whole thing out. Last pick. It all comes down to this. What do you got?
I think it's pretty clear that my best path to victory is that Fitz actually wins this week, and I win a messy, sloppy 4-way tie just on total points. I also want to tip my hat to both Harmon and Tera, who have talked up Amir Abdullah on this show, which is that's not sincere. They don't mean it. They just know that I'm going to pick Alexander Mattison here, and they want me to feel bad about it. Well, guess what? I do feel bad about it. It's Alexander Mattison. I had to pick a lousy running back in this game. Here we are.
I can only promise you that the group chat, if the Raiders during that game, if either Madison goes off or Abdullah goes off, the group chat is going to remind everybody of who they selected, and it will remind you on Thursday of how this thing all shook out. We'll see. This is a big week for all of us as we either end up with a 4-way tie in total chaos or somebody talking massive amounts of trash. All right, it's time for some fantasy face-off. Andy, Tera, take it away.
Yeah, face-off time, and don't worry, we're not talking Alexander Mattison or Amir Abdullah in this segment. This week we're talking Jerome Ford. That is a man stepping into a larger workload, obviously with Nick Chubb out for the season, sidelined by the foot injury. Ford did most of his damage last week on a single carry, which is very typical of Jerome Ford, right? He's a funny player. He's definitely plenty of big playability, also a lot of small playability. We see that frequently with Ford, so he's tough to slot in for fantasy purposes. How about Jerome Ford versus Rachaad White this week, Tera?
Yeah, I go back and forth on this one, Andy, because Rachaad White really does have the higher ceiling regardless of the matchup here, regardless of Bucky Irving being healthy in this offense, just because Tampa Bay's offense is so incredible. White has finished as a top 20 back and forth the past 5 games, and so has Bucky Irving. The backfield is crazy. It's tough here. I want to go with him, but I lean towards Ford just because of the known volume and maybe the safer floor here. But I mean, they're neck and neck here. I could go either way on this one. This is the most non-committed I have ever been to a fantasy face-off this entire season, Andy.
Yeah, it's close when you're dealing with like an obvious primary running back versus a secondary running back, right? But White has been really good. I would lean toward White because if there's a game on the schedule this week in which, the total reaches like 65, 70 points, it's probably that one between Tampa and Dallas. How about Ramondre Stevenson having a disappointing season versus Jerome Ford?
This one is a little bit more clear-cut for me because while I love Ramondre Stevenson and his matchup, I don't love the way that he is being utilized in this offense. There is simply not enough goal line touches and opportunities, and the checkdowns, there's not enough of those to go around in their backfield as well. And the insistent usage of Antonio Gibson here is very frustrating. It has been 6 weeks since we've seen Ramondre Stevenson have more than 11 fantasy points. His ceiling has disappeared. So with that said, the ceiling is definitely higher for Jerome Ford. We even saw it last week there. I would rather bank on those big runs from him than the middling production from Stevenson here.
Yeah, I fully agree with that one. That's a good call. Way too much Antonio Gibson for my liking. Difficult matchup. Don't like it. How about Tony Pollard, who is obviously playing through some stuff, not practicing right? He was so good early in the season. It's been a little bit rougher lately. How about Tony Pollard versus Jerome Ford?
Yeah, you mentioned the not practicing there. I feel like this is just one of those years where he has been banged up all season. He sits out all week, and then he shows up on Sunday to do his job like the professional that he is. Indianapolis' defense isn't a layup here. So I have kind of bumped or moved back Tony Pollard in the rankings a little bit, but still not so far back that I would play Jerome Ford over him. So I lean towards Pollard on this one. The only thing that maybe worries me a little bit here is that while I don't trust Spears, he did get a goal line touch there and that kind of crazy touchdown that we saw last week early in the game. So it's a possibility that he kind of, pushes in there and hurts Pollard's production a little bit here, but I still trust Tony Pollard more here. How about you, Andy?
Yeah, this one is actually the toughest call for me, only because it's pretty clear that Tony Pollard is playing through some stuff. But man, it's hard to get the image of him out of your head from how well he was playing basically in the first 2/3 of the season. He was really great, like vintage Tony Pollard stuff. So that's probably where I'd lean, and I hope that I get some version of that this week. All right, I think that helps some people out. Let's send it back to Fitz and Matt for a little lock it in.
All right, we're going to check the list, check it twice. Going to go naughty nice. Lock it in. Harmon, give me somebody you're locking in. They're on the nice list. You're confident.
Yeah, I'm locking in Terry McLaurin here this week. I talked a little bit about the matchup earlier, where I do think that typically if you look at some of the coverage looks that the Eagles give opposing offenses, that does favor Terry McLaurin as long as Cliff Kingsbury can move him around. But really what I want to talk about here is loyalty, okay? We haven't talked about this enough yet. Listen, you drafted Terry McLaurin in August. You didn't expect him to be one of your best picks. Well, guess what? He was one of your best picks. He's the wide receiver 5 on the season. He's got 11 touchdowns, second at the position. He's been a deep threat. He's done it in the red zone. He's won in multiple ways for you. What does it say to the culture of your team if you just stick this guy on the bench here in week 16? That's not a good look for you as a manager. It really kind of brings into question everything that you're about, the entire ecosystem that you're building over there. So for me, this is the type of player I'm playing this week because I think the matchup can be beaten. And do you realistically have, 3 better options than Terry McLaurin? I doubt it.
I just love the idea of getting a text from a player you bench on your fantasy league that's like, hey, man, locker room feels that. We know what you just did to us. All right, give me somebody else you're locking in.
Yeah, now I'll try to maybe actually do some halfway decent analysis here and not talk about fake culture of fake teams. Josh Downs is somebody I'm locking into lineups this week. On the season, it does look like this is a bad matchup because the Titans are one of the 5 worst matchups for fantasy wide receivers. But since week 10, the Titans' pass defense has kind of fallen apart here. Tennessee ranks 28th in EPA per dropback allowed, 29th in dropback success rate allowed. So this is actually a pretty favorable spot because they've had some injuries on that back end of the defense. And things are always rocky in the Colts offense because, Anthony Richardson, and I know some of the film bros out there and some people like to really love Richardson want to show you each and every mistake that a wide receiver makes, or this player let Richardson down in this way. Well, guess what? The box score sometimes looks like something out of 1970 one way or another, okay? So I get that this is a bit of a murky environment, but this matchup is actually pretty decent here, and especially if Alec Pierce is not going to play in this game, he's out with a concussion. I think that does sort of thin out the target tree just a little bit here. Adonai Mitchell hasn't been a guy that has earned consistent work. It's really been Michael Pittman and Josh Downs are the main players in this passing offense. 9 targets for Pittman last week, 8 targets for Josh Downs. Downs is the guy who's been the best and most consistent separator on the team. So I think you can lock Josh Downs in as a flex wide receiver here in week 16.
My only disappointment is when you mentioned Film Bros, we didn't get the voice of Film Bros. Like, I feel like this is usually where Harmon gives me the voice of like the fantasy. Like, do Film Bros have a certain way they talk? Harmon, the world wants to know.
Oh, I think you've got to get a little snooty with it. Listen, what you people don't understand. I don't know. Who am I throwing under the bus across the industry with that voice there? Probably myself, because I know I've made this point before. So I am making fun of myself with the snooty voice here too.
Sure. I like it. Any way you want to bring it. Let's bring everybody back together. Let's hop back on the rooftops and dance around for some hurry-up offense. We're going to answer a ton of your questions because it's an important playoff time. Mr. Raymond or Mr. Ramon says, need urgent advice. Non-PPR league. Need one running back to tear with Bijan, D. Swift, Charbonnet, or Patrick Taylor. Also, play Debo or Hawkinson. Thanks. You're the best. All right, Tara, what do you think?
It's sad that we don't get Charbonnet, and maybe he is the RB1 here in this week, but I don't know if I trust Seattle enough. I would lean towards Swift on this one, and yes, I would play Hawkinson over Debo at this point.
Now, the graphics are just stunning, by the way. Keenan Allen, Brian Robinson Jr., Kenneth Walker in full PPR for one flex spot, asks Caleb Gentry. What do you think, Andy Behrens?
This one's really close. Earlier in the season, I would have given you Kenneth Walker, no question about it. I'm tempted by Brian Robinson Jr., but man, I actually think the ceiling here is with Keenan Allen. He was great against the Lions last time. Man, do I hope the Bears don't embarrass themselves in front of Ben Johnson.
Right, that's what it's really about right now. Give the man some hope. Brian Baker says, Kyler Murray or Jordan Love, Jerome Ford or Ramondre in a PPR. Thanks. Harmon, what do you think?
Yeah, I feel better about Jordan Love there. I think that they can throw on this Saints defense. The fact that we saw Jordan Love uncorking some downfield passes makes me feel a little bit better. And Ramondre's been a little shaky, but I'm not trying to find creative ways to invest in the DTR offense, so I'll go with Ramondre.
All right, the next one comes from Michael Contis, who says, Mooney, Strange, MHJ, pick 2. What do you think, Tara?
This is tough. It really is, because honestly, Strange probably has the most solid floor between all of these guys, but it is the fantasy playoffs. We're shooting for the upside here. Mooney and Marvin Harrison Jr., just be aware the floor is awful low, but these guys, they're the ones that are going to get you there from the points perspective.
There is nothing worse than worrying about the floor right before a playoff game in fantasy football. Ferns comes in, DK or Malik Washington. Can't believe I'm asking this, but DK has been disappointing. Plus, Gino's banged up. Andy, what do you think?
I can't believe you're asking this either. I mean, I get it. DK has been disappointing. It's been quiet for a little bit over a month, but man, you got to be chasing upside in the fantasy playoffs. I like Washington, but I think his ceiling is like 7 catches for 70 yards. DK's ceiling is 4 catches, 120, 2 touchdowns.
Papa Izzy with the next one. I love it when you call me Big Papa. Says, happy holidays, y'all. Thielen or Patrick Taylor? What do you think, Harmon?
God, don't throw to me after you say that. I'm going to go with Thielen here. Mostly because the fact that Isaac Guerrero is not playing is truly ruining my life. So I'm actually just completely manifesting nothing from Patrick Taylor. I can't stomach seeing that when Guerrero could have been on my teams. So let's go with Thielen here, the number 1 target for Bryce Young.
I do want to point out none of the platinum records behind me or gold records behind me are for rap for a reason. There'll be no more biggie. All right,
humble brag. Humble brag.
DZ, no, not even a humble brag, just a straight brag. Says, happy holidays, need 2 wide receivers, London, Hill, McLaurin, or Jennings. What do you think, Tara?
Oh, they're all fantastic options. I do lean towards Tyreek Hill based off volume of Jalen Waddle not playing here. And between London and McLaurin, I think I probably still lean towards Terry McLaurin here. Again, I like what the guy said before about the change in usage there.
I'm going to read the next one from A.S. Bobber. And I'm saying these names carefully because, y'all, I'm Ron Burgundy. So if you put in front of me, I might get myself fired. Good emoji. Hey, y'all. PPR need 1. Hawkinson, Strange, or Kincaid playing for the belt with a bunch of emojis after that. What do you think, Andy?
Yeah, I think all these options are pretty good, especially in PPR. I wouldn't bank on the exact same volume from Strange again this week. So I'm going to go Hawkinson. Volume has been really consistent.
All right, the next one comes from Quentin Green. Defense, start Bengals, Tampa, Colts, or Jags. Jalen McMillan, Calvin Ridley, or BRJ. That's a lot of questions, Harmon. Just start wherever you want to from Quentin.
I mean, I don't even know. BRJ is Brian Robinson Jr. I didn't even know he got himself a nickname. I'm probably going Calvin Ridley over BRJ. So I'll go there. And then from the defensive perspective, I am personally starting the Bengals defense, which feels disgusting. But I'm doing it, so you can join me as well.
Quentin, if you are using abbreviations because you are out of characters on Twitter X, then you have too long of a question. Ron Anderson for my flex spot. DK Metcalf, Jayden Reed, Sam Laporta, Patrick Taylor, or Jerome Ford. Just because Laporta's name was said, I got to go to Andy. What do you think?
Oh, heck yeah. Only 1 for the flex spot. Wow. Well, unfortunately, it's not going to be Sam Laporta for me here. I'm going to go DK Metcalf here, and I know you don't want to do it, but again, he has the highest ceiling.
Rolling them DK dice. All right. Ant with the next question. Pick 2, half PPR. Kendra Miller, Garrett Wilson, Juwan Jennings, Cooper Kupp. What do you think, Tara?
We've been a little bit traumatized by Cooper Kupp recently here. So while he's still has a okay matchup in volume, I'm going to nix him. And then Kendre Miller, good matchup. But again, the volatility of that Saints offense, nix him out there. So it's Garrett Wilson and Juwan Jennings, highest upside here for me.
The next question comes from Peter Forsberg. I can only presume that's the NHL's Peter Forsberg. Flex 1, Metcalf, Marvin Harrison Jr., Kenneth Walker, or Brian Robinson Jr. Ask FFL. What do you think, Andy?
Man, is it gonna be weird if I just keep going DK Metcalf in these questions? I know he's got a higher ceiling than Marvin Harrison Jr. That's for sure. I don't trust Kenneth Walker with Charbonnet involved, and I don't love the matchup for Robinson. I just like his role, so I'm going DK.
All right, the sweaters were on point. The graphics were even better. We couldn't do this if you guys weren't hanging out with us. I know it's been a wild season. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Just inject this in my veins. I need this. It's going to be my new profile picture until the new year. We're back the day after Christmas at our usual time, 7:30 Eastern, to recap the Wednesday games to get you set. Of course, we'll be back here next week at noon Eastern, 9 Pacific for our season finale. Way too early look ahead to 2025. Again, it takes a whole group of people that work their tails off to put all these graphics together. Heck, they even Photoshopped me in the middle of the show. I can't thank Dan and everybody else behind the scenes enough for how much they put into this show every single week. I hope everybody wins. For Andy Behrens, for Matt Harmon, for Tera Roberts, I'm Jason Fitz. Thanks so much for watching Fantasy Football Live, presented by Ram Trucks.